Welcome to another episode of the Lilja and Lou podcast. And this time we are going to talk about the physical book versus the ebook. Which is the best and why? Or is any of them better than the other? We're also going to review that was originally released as an ebook, and King's latest short story, Afterlife, that he read recently. Besides that, we will have some news for you. And so let's kick this off.
Welcome, welcome. Do not fear the door that lies before you. We will protect you. We are your guides, Hans and Lou, and we will give you the latest in Stephen King news. But before we do so, you must prove yourself worthy. You must open the door and join us in the death room.
And now it's time for the news. The first news this time is that the actor Chandler Riggs joined the cast for the adaptation of Stephen King's short story Grandma. And he is joined by Joel Courtney from Super 8 and Frances O'Connor, who will play the mother. And this is in the movie is actually called Mercy instead of Grandma, and I don't really know why they have changed the title of it. And for those of you who recognize the name Chandler Riggs, yes, that is from the superb TV series The Walking Dead.
Which is why Hans got that story.
Yeah. So do you have an idea would change the name?
No, I have to say off the top of my head, I can't remember the story off the top of my head, so I really can't say why they would change the title from Grandma.
It's the one where the kid is left behind. He's left home alone with his sick grandmother who dies.
Mm-hmm.
And he sees her as a monster, and when he goes into her bedroom and stuff.
Okay.
It was actually filmed once before for the TV show, The Twilight Zone.
The new Twilight Zone, yeah.
Yeah, new Twilight Zone.
Yeah. I'll have to take that up because I missed that episode.
Yeah, it's quite good.
Yeah, because it was adapted by Harlan Ellison, who is a fantastic writer in his own. So.
Yeah, really worth checking out. I just can't understand why they would change the name for it. I mean, in the King community, Grandma is a well-known story, so I don't know why. This will be a future film, as far as I can understand.
Yep.
So it will be interesting to see how they will make that story last for about 90 minutes.
Right.
I guess they will fill it out with more than that.
Yeah, and I don't know if you missed it, Hans. I did send you some emails about this, but apparently Dylan McDermott has also been cast to join the movie. And he was probably, if you've ever watched the Lawyer series, what was that Lawyer series called? It was kind of an offshoot from Boston Legal, I believe. So he's a well-known commodity as well, and I don't know what character he's going to be playing, but that should be he's definitely an interesting addition to the cast as well. And of course, with Frances O'Connor, always good to see her again as well.
And it seems like they have changed the plot a bit here, and maybe that's because they are doing it as a full-length movie. Because in the story and in the Twilight Zone episode, there's just this kid who's home with his grandmother, who he thinks is a witch. And in the movie here, we will follow two young boys who visit the hospital where they learn their dying grandmother is a witch. So I think they have expanded it a bit, adding more characters.
Yeah. Well, that should be interesting. And I always worry less about a short story being expanded than I do a big story being compressed. So
yeah.
We'll see how it turns out.
Yep.
Next item up is Dolores Claiborne, the Stephen King novel that starred Kathy Bates in the movie version, is going to debut as an opera with the San Francisco Opera. However, And this should be a very interesting interpretation of the story. It's going to run from September 6th through July 13th with 8 shows, and an interesting choice for a piece of work to be retooled as an opera, for sure. So if anybody out there, any of our listeners are opera fans, and they're going to be in that San Francisco area from September through July, we would be very interested to get your feedback on this type of interpretation of a Stephen King work. I must admit, I'm not an opera fan myself, so this would not be something that I would go to see, even if it is based on a Stephen King story. I don't know about you, Hans. Is opera something that you dig?
No, I'm afraid I'm not, and I'm sorry for laughing, but I think it sounds ridiculous to do an opera of Dolores Claiborne. But I'm for experiments, so I think it's good that they try this, and I mean you can do more than fail, so I think it's a good thing to try it. But I can't understand how they can make an opera of it. But I would definitely go see it if I were in the area, which I won't be, but I would definitely see it at least.
Well, you're braver than I am.
Yeah.
I have no interest in the opera, so this wouldn't work for me. Especially
No,
if it's in Italian or German.
Yeah. Well, I don't either. So, but it would be interesting to see. It would probably be
this is
strange.
This is something I just need to see a YouTube clip of. I think I'll be satisfied.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I apologize to any opera lovers out there.
Yeah. I would love to be proven wrong here, and that this is a huge success, because I'm all for trying new things, as I said. So it's a good thing.
Alrighty. Well, the next story is not a new thing. It's actually an old thing.
Yes, the story The Glass Floor, that was originally published in Weird Tales in 1990, is being re-released by Cemetery Dance in their issue 68. And this is quite interesting, since this has never appeared in one of King's collections. And I was thinking about it, and I wondered why. Because it's a good story, and strangely it has never been picked up for any collection. But if you haven't read it and want to do that, you could definitely pick up Cemetery Dance number 68, and you will find it there.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, because I don't recall reading this story, and I do subscribe to Cemetery Dance, so this is a very nice bonus that they're including this story in their next issue. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So back on the silver screen front, this time we're talking about 11/22/63, the Stephen King novel about the time-traveling love story with the teacher and the JFK assassination. That's currently on the schedule to be converted into a movie, and at the time, Silence of the Lamb director Jonathan Demme had signed on and was going to be working on this project, but he informed the Playlist publication that he's no longer involved with that project. Sounds like amicable creative differences. Because it's such a big book, when you have to convert it to a movie property, obviously you have to focus on certain aspects of the book and downplay other ones. And it sounded like Jonathan's interest in the book lay in areas that Stephen King was not as interested in. So they decided to part ways, and that's unfortunate. So the movie is still moving forward, but Jonathan Demme is no longer involved. And I'd be really curious to see which parts of the book the two of them were interested in. I kind of have a feeling that Demme was probably more interested in the JFK stuff, whereas Stephen King was probably more interested in the story with the characters, the love story.
Yeah, and it's funny to read a statement like this. They are using so many nice words, but in the end, they wanted to do two different movies.
Yeah.
I think it's for the best that they parted ways, because if they would have drawn to different ends of the movies, it would probably not have been so good. So I think it's in that retrospective, I think it's good that they parted ways. But it could have been a good movie, I think, in both ways. So maybe they should do a two-part movie.
Yeah, everything's going to 2 parts or 3 parts. Yeah, it's
2 alternate movies like Desperation and Regulators.
I mean, I have to admire Jonathan Demme's artistic integrity, because I haven't really seen him doing anything big in quite a while. So obviously, for him to step away from this is a much bigger deal than it is for Stephen King. So you have to admire him for that. Obviously, he didn't feel that way. So yeah, I wish him the best in his next projects, because I've been a big Silence of the Lamb fan, but I haven't really watched or seen anything major from him since that movie, and that's quite a while ago now.
Yeah, we'll see what happened to that one.
Hmm.
And we are just going to mention that you have the whole coverage of King's visit to University in Lowell on the site. And you can see King reading Afterlife, and you can see a Q&A and the talk with King. And I don't know if you have watched it all, but I was kind of disappointed in the Q&A. I didn't think there were, how do I put this nicely? Not every question was as interesting as I would have hoped they were.
I think that's a trend, unfortunately. The more of these types of clips that we get to see, the more you realize, and I tip my hat off to these actors and writers and whatever, because these questions, some of them have been asked like a million times, and you would think that people, if
Yeah.
there are Stephen King fans, they would watch some of these clips and realize that somebody's already asked that question. But yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
it's
And I mean,
very rare that you get a new and interesting question.
yeah, and if you take the time to go to one of these events, and I mean, it's not that easy to get tickets. So I mean, you have to be quite a big Stephen King fan, and a lot of the people who asked question made a point of telling King that they had traveled really far to be there.
And
So
then
I mean, if you
asking them
do all
questions.
that, yeah, I mean, if you do all that, you could at least pick a good question to ask, I think.
Couldn't they think up a good question while they were taking 9 hours to get there?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah. So, but it's interesting, and one thing it shows is that how good King is with an audience. I mean,
Mm,
if it would have been me who got asked those questions, I think I've lost it sometime. But
yeah.
he always gives an answer, and he gives a good one. And I think I can't remember the question now, but I think it's one that he just answered no. But that's rarely. He often expanded and
Yeah,
make
he just did
make a
that.
thing of it.
Yeah, he just did that as a joke because it took the guy like 5 minutes to ask the question.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he just said
yeah,
no.
yep.
Yeah, I know the guy
So
you're
King,
talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So it's fun to see that King is still entertaining, even though he's fed with these, in my opinion, not that interesting questions,
Yeah.
and he still makes it watchable.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. He's very good with audiences. The more times I see him in these types of situations, the more impressed I am.
yeah,
I have a question for you, Hans. I'm curious, do
yeah.
you sort of get the feeling that maybe King has, because he's been doing quite a few of these appearances the last couple of years, do you think he's kind of maybe trying to ramp up to a point where because he's 65 now,
Yeah.
which is the legal retirement age? You get a feeling that he's going to sort of say, maybe, I don't know, I hope not, but maybe in the next year or two, all of a sudden he's going to say, I'm kind of at the end of my string on this, and I'm going to do such and such an appearance in this place, and after that, I will be doing no more public appearances. Or do you think he's going to keep doing these for a long time to go still?
I think he's going to do it for a long time. I think that back when, I think it was in '98 when he released Bag of Bones, I think it was, he mentioned that he would retire, and I think he even gave a statement that said that he's still going to write, but he's not going to publish as much, maybe a book every third year or something.
And that's why we're
Um,
getting 2 books, and he's producing a TV series this year.
exactly. But at the time when he said it,
Yeah.
he did it officially, and it was a done deal. So it was the facts. But somehow, for some reason, he changed his mind, and after that, I don't think he can retire. I think he has to write, and I think that even though he says he isn't writing for the reader, he's writing because he have to. I
Right.
think the satisfaction of having someone read what you write. I mean, you always want people to like what you do. So I think he will continue to writing till he just drops dead, I think.
Right.
And
Okay. Yeah. Maybe I didn't express my question clearly. I agree with you. I think he's going to write till the day he dies. But I'm just wondering if you think at some point he might stop doing these public speaking appearances.
No, I don't think. I think the day he stops is the day when he can't do it physically because he's
Mm.
too old, or if
He's
I
tired.
don't know, if he gets sick or
Yeah.
if he gets sick or tired or something. But I think it will have to be something physical that stops him. I don't think he will. I think he enjoys it, even
Mhm.
though he says it's a lot of work. But I think he
Right.
enjoys it. I mean, if you watch this latest appearance, I don't think you can be as good as he is if you don't like it.
Hmm.
I mean, So
I'd almost
I don't.
wish he did like this as a TV show or something. Like
Yeah, yeah,
every so often he just released like a special, like a talk show special or something like that.
yeah.
On one of the
But
cable channels or something. That would be cool.
yeah, but that is one thing I think we won't see more of. When he wrote that column
Mm.
for Entertainment Weekly,
Right.
um, and I don't think he wants to do something. I think he want to do it when he feels like it and when he thinks it's fun. And I would suspect, without knowing, that that's the reason why he stopped writing that column, because it got to be a work, and he didn't only couldn't just do it because it was fun.
Hmm.
So I think I don't think we will see him doing something regular like a TV show or something.
No. Well, he's doing a
I think
TV show, right? Under the Dome.
yeah,
But
yeah, but I mean
yeah, yeah, like a
like
talk show.
with
Yeah.
him as a talk show host or something. It
Yeah.
would be interesting, but I don't think we will see that.
Yeah. Alrighty. So that's the news.
This is great. What's our job? We'd like drive around and pick up stiffs or what?
It's time for reviews from the night shift. Hey, everybody. In this ebook heavy podcast, we're going to be talking about a ebook only novella that Stephen King released a few years back for the Kindle. And that novel was called and that's just U-R. And I've always taken it to mean some sort of short form for Earth, because this story deals with multiple Earths. And one of the references that we found on Wikipedia is that it's in the book of Genesis, it's the birthplace of Abraham, which I kind of like, because that maybe could be the location of the Dark Tower too, in another world, I guess you could say. So what was your experience reading Hans?
I think it was a quite exciting story, and I actually got a bit jealous of Weasley. I mean, imagine finding all those stories that
Mhm.
haven't been released in your reality.
Yeah.
So that would have been great.
Yeah. Can you explain that a little bit more? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, sure. The main character, Weasley Smith, buys himself a Kindle after pressure from both his students and his former wife.
Girlfriend.
That think he's dork for just reading regular books. So he gets one, and even though it only exists in white, he gets a pink one.
Mm-hmm.
So, but he thinks that's just a mistake by Amazon sending it out. But as he looks through it, he finds different. I suspect it's different worlds that he can buy books from.
Yep.
And newspapers and stuff. And in those books, we have the same authors that we have in our reality, but they have done different books. They have done books that doesn't exist in our reality, and they lived a different time frame. So it's like an alternate universe.
Yeah.
That's very, very similar to ours, but still very different. So so he finds a lot of books that hasn't been released here.
Right.
So he really likes it. He likes reading, so it's a gold mine for him.
Yeah, and it's a gold. It would be a gold mine for anybody that likes to read books. Yeah, this is a very interesting project by King, because the commercial aspects of it. This was, I believe, funded and promoted, or he was paid by Amazon to specifically write this story for the Kindle.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously he incorporates it, but I think it's rather seamless, the functioning of how a Kindle works in that. But he uses it as a gateway to these multiple Earths, where I think there's over 11,000.
Yeah.
And this English teacher, obviously, he's a great lover of books. And all of this is going to tie nicely into our discussion later about ebooks. So when he gets this, very cynical of it. So when he finds out that he can read books by his favorite writers, like Ernest Hemingway, he finds that he has 4 new books he's never read with this Kindle. Of course, he's beside himself with joy, and it terrifies him, but it's very addictive. So I like how King has taken what is a very commercial idea, but he's really layered on 3 major story themes here, and 2 of them are fairly big picture. The one that we've been talking about, these alternate Earths, which nicely tie into the Dark Tower series, because that's all about multiple realities as well. And so, like, he's getting all these different writers, and then he ties in this whole thing about the Cuban Missile Crisis in certain realities actually happening, and they find out when they start reading the newspapers from those other realities that all of a sudden they stop. So that there's a lot of real cool stuff going on here. And then he's got some smaller themes about reading books versus e-readers. And he all ties this with this Wesley Smith character, who I assume must be maybe a cousin of Johnny Smith from the Dead Zone. I don't know. But that he's having relationship problems with his girlfriend. And so this is like a really old, like a 1950s pulp SF tale. It's a great story. It's got a lot of big ideas in it, but it's tied to these characters. So I think it really shows King at his best across the board. Usually he doesn't handle science fiction ideas that great in some of his stories, but in this one it really worked well, and I really enjoyed this story quite a bit.
Yeah, I agree. I was a bit worried before it was released because all this promotion for Amazon and stuff. But as you say, you really don't know it. I think you mentioned sometimes that the Kindle comes in this and this color and it costs this and this. But I mean, if you don't know that it's released like that, you wouldn't even think about it. So I don't think that's a big problem. And also, it's fascinating, all these different, exactly as you say. There's just like us, but like the Cuba missile, it got a different ending and the world vanished. So I think it's done a great job with it.
Yeah.
Really, really great.
In some ways, it almost seems like a little bit like a dry run for 11/22/63, because we've got this story where he finds out that his girlfriend's going to be killed in a bus accident. And so he sets out to change the future by saving her, which is kind of like the whole concept of 11/22/63, with the main character trying to prevent John F. Kennedy from being assassinated.
Yeah.
But fortunately, his girlfriend is obviously not quite a pressure point in time, so whatever impact there is from her still being alive seems to be very small, whereas with JFK, it has very far-reaching consequences. So I kind of made a joke about Johnny Smith here, but it also has a little bit of tie-in, I think, to the Dead Zone as well, where Johnny Smith is trying to prevent a possible future by making sure Greg Stilson never becomes the president. So
yeah.
And then he ties it all in with the Dark Tower at the end with the men with low men in yellow coats. So
yeah, it's somewhat depressing that her still being alive isn't affecting the world.
Well,
just to continue like nothing happened. So
yeah, well, some people, for whatever reason, just their impact is not that great. That doesn't mean that I don't think that's a value judgment of their life or anything. That's just in the theory of time. Some incidents cause more problems than other, and in this particular case, we have to assume that her staying alive doesn't, because the low men in yellow coats don't really punish Wesley too harshly for what he did, except take away his Kindle.
Yeah, exactly, and that's probably a big punishment for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
one thing that annoys me a little bit about the story is, at least as I interpret it, is that Wesley's girlfriend is dumping him because he reads real books instead of from the computer. And I mean,
I don't really think that was the issue. I think it was just that he wasn't listening to her.
Yeah, but you get the idea that was what made the final decision.
Well, she's probably is irritated that he reads all the time.
Yeah.
Doesn't pay more attention to her, but yeah. No, I really can't, for a project that came from a very commercial birthing, this turned out to be a really good rip of a yarn. I really enjoyed this one quite a bit.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great story.
And if you haven't got a Kindle yet, you really should try to get this story, because it does have a lot of ties into a lot of other Stephen King's works. So it's definitely very worth your while tracking down. And you can download this story onto your PC if you don't have a Kindle and read it that way as well. So, but in this day and age, I imagine a lot more people have e-readers than when the story first came out.
Yeah, and it's actually been released as an audiobook as well. So it's not
very good.
Only Kindle anymore.
Oh, excellent. Do you know who reads it?
Yeah, it's narrated by Halter Graham.
Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with him.
Yeah, so it's 2 hours. So it's a fairly short story that you can listen to in one sitting.
Yeah, short story with big ideas, though.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
I think this one is one of those short stories that could be expanded to an entire book.
Yeah, and I think that book was 11/22/63.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyhow,
right.
So that's pretty well. That's everything I've got on this. Do you have anything else to add to it? Thoughts about the
No, that's just check it out if you haven't already. Okay, we are now going to talk about pros and cons with ebooks and how they compare to real books. For a long time, if you want to read a book, you had to read it as a real book. But now, with all the readers that's out there, iPods, and all the different readers, it's fairly easy to get a book. You don't have to leave your home even. You can download it pretty easy and read it.
Mm-hmm.
And some people think this is a good idea. Some people think it's a bad idea. And I don't know. What do you think? I'm pretty comfortable with reading on my iPad.
Ah, okay. So that's an interesting comment because you ran the question on your Facebook page, and we thank everybody who sent in their comments. We're going to reference them during our conversation, and we've talked about ebooks before on the podcast, and I think it's worth revisiting from time to time because I'm finding the acceptance of ebooks is becoming much greater with each passing month, almost never forget years. So like you, Hans, I've done a fair bit of e-reading lately, and we'll get into the reasons for that, but I just think that we want to revisit this because we were very interested to see how people were feeling about it. And going through the replies, I think it's still generally everybody's go-to answer is, I always prefer the hard copy, but the convenience of e-readers is really attractive.
Yeah, and that's somewhat like how I feel as well. It's very easy to read from the e-reader.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a book almost instantly if you want to read it. You don't have to go to the bookstore and it's sold out, or you have to order it online and stuff. So you can get it fairly easy. So and me living in Sweden, there's probably even harder for me to get some books than all the fans in the US. So that's an advantage for me because ebooks, there's not as big postage on an ebook as it is on a real book.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
Absolutely. That's one of the driving things for me too. I live in Canada, and I very often find that the books that I want to get, or certain versions of the book I want to get, it's almost impossible. So to order it physically, sometimes the cost of postage and shipping is as much as the book, if not more, depending on if it's a old paperback or something like that. So that's really depressing. So in that way, e-readers or ebooks have allowed me to get books that I normally wouldn't be able to get simply because of cost. So I think that's one of the big pluses with ebook readers. But like to everybody who posts the answers that we usually get about this, like from Cheryl Thompson, she's saying the smell and the warmth and the feel of pages, you can't get that from a flat e-reader. And absolutely, I agree 100%. If given the choice, I definitely prefer to hold the book in my hand. But in this day and age, it's just not possible. And the cost of the books in some cases, and plus the cost of shipping, especially like you, me, and Hans, who are not located near a major U.S. metropolis, it's just financially impossible to get all the books that you want through the traditional methods.
Yeah, and I think you have different kind of reasons why you want a book. Like if there's a book you just want to read it because it's a good story.
Yeah.
Then for me it's really no difference if I read it as a real book or as an ebook.
Yep.
And then you have like these nice limited editions which you obviously have to get in as a real book. So I think there's one category of people who buy books to collect them.
Yep.
And then it's really no question of which version you have to have of the book.
Yeah.
But I think if it's a book that I just want to read and I really don't care about who's written it or something I want to collect, then it really doesn't matter to me which version of the book I read. So
right. Yeah, and that's interesting because I know there's one comment from my Frank Maresca. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, sir. He's a collector like you just mentioned, and he's getting these limited editions, but he was afraid of damage and wear and tear because of physically reading those books. So he came up with a compromise of buying those books and then reading them on his Kindle. That way his books stay in the mint condition, and he gets to read the story, which is a perfect solution for collectors.
And that's he's kind of a mix of those two kind of readers that I mentioned, one who wants to collect them and one who wants to read them. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have the Teddy Crowling says, I think it's he.
Yep.
Will never own a Kindle as long as I can pick up a book. The feel of the pages, the smell of the book. I go to my library every single day. I meet people, talk, get out of the house, and I can see that
Absolutely
being a point.
Yeah.
But I mean, you have to be able to get out of the house for something else than going to the library. So I mean, I don't see how. I don't see myself thinking that, oh, I'm going to pick up a physical book instead of an ebook,
Mm-hmm.
so that I can get out of the house. So
Okay.
So I think there's a sentimental value of the real book
Mm-hmm.
that goes far beyond just reading the story.
Yep.
It's so much more than just, oh, I'm going to read this story.
Yeah.
And I think that's and that I think is something that people that are like from maybe 20, 25 years and older today,
Mm-hmm.
I think we are the last the last generation of that feeling.
Maybe.
But I think the younger generations aren't going to have that sentimental bond to a physical book.
Yeah, I think it'll be more like collectors. Like you're seeing today,
Yeah.
vinyl records are kind of making a comeback. A lot of people prefer the more natural sound of them over CDs or digital music. But I think in general, like even through you've run these questions a couple of times, and every time we're reading the responses, generally as a trend, more people are saying that yes, they like real books, but the convenience of ebooks has finally made them use that as an avenue for reading that normally they weren't doing a couple of years ago. So I think the trend is there. I'm rather surprised at really how quickly ebooks have caught on, because I know over the last 5 years people were saying, oh, this is going to take another generation. And really within the last 2 or 3 years, the turnaround, I think more ebooks are sold now than paper books for a lot of the big retailers. So it's definitely a trend. Is that a good trend? It's got its pluses and minuses. A book like that we discussed on the podcast a couple of podcasts ago, Knowing Darkness, which is a collection of the artwork by Stephen King books. No way that would work on an e-reader. It would be a very underwhelming experience. You need this big oversized coffee table book, which is just a beautiful, gorgeous book, and you know, that's something that when you're holding it in your hands, you're going, wow, this is a really tactile experience and visual experience because of the size of the pages. And unless you somehow put it on like a 24 or 50-inch computer monitor, I guess you could kind of recreate that experience. But then again, you're tied to sitting at your desk, whereas opposed with this, you can have this book in your lap while you're by the fireplace drinking a nice glass of scotch or whatever, right? So.
Yeah, but the iPod 7 is going to be that big, so.
Oh, is it?
No, I'm just kidding.
Resizable screen? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there is actually one advantage that the real book can't match.
Yeah.
And I got my hands on a book about the Friday the 13th movies.
Okay.
Called Camp Crystal Lake, and
nice.
it's got this text, and on those pages in the ebook there's pictures, and you can click on them and they go full size.
Okay.
And you can even enlarge them even more, and you have like film clips added into the book, so you read about maybe one of the directors.
Okay.
And at the end of that chapter, you have like, it looks very similar to when you have like a YouTube clip embedded in a web page.
Right.
And you can click on that, and in full size, you can hear the director talk about the movie and stuff.
Mm.
And then you just close it down, and you can continue reading.
Right.
It's a very good example of how to use the ebook fully, I think.
Yeah.
And you can't do that with a regular book, so that's definitely one of the advantages with the ebook.
Yeah.
I think
that sounds like quite the multimedia experience.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I don't know. I haven't seen many books that done that. I know that 11/22/63 by King.
Yep.
That ebook version had a short film added in where King talks about the Kennedy assassination.
Right.
So they are. I think that we're going to see more about that, and mostly in non-fiction books where you can add like film clips and stuff to further increase the experience.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up. I think the movement of books to embrace multimedia can only help their sales because, and this goes more with the younger generation that you were talking about, they're just so used to like YouTube clips and things like that. My son hardly watches regular TV, and he does most of his reading off his tablet, whether that's YouTube clips or what, but
Yeah.
that's where the younger generation is accessing most of their media. So for them, the move to ebook reader or ebooking it's just inevitable. And I think in 10 years from now, this will be kind of like a whole different story.
Yeah.
Books will
Yeah.
be probably relegated to the top 50 writers, sellers like the Stephen Kings and the Browns and
Yeah.
whatever readers, mystery readers that are out there, and the mid-list writers, and that more people will be reading their books via ebook readers. And if they really like these particular mid-list reader, they might follow up on it and see if there's any specialty presses that are doing limited editions of books and things of that nature.
Yeah. Yeah. I think real books will be a more of a collector's item than actually a book to read.
I think that's where the trend will go.
Yeah.
And the other example of a real book that I think could never, which is a bit different, but it's kind of a companion to what you're talking about with the Friday the 13th, was the illustrated guide to Stephen King that we talked about with Bev Vincent, because that has all these inserts that are replications of manuscripts handwritten and typed from Stephen King and that. And there's no way you can do that with the ebook again. And that's a very tactile book as well, because you get to open up a folder and you pull out this paper and you unfold it, and it's like Stephen King's handwritten notes for for The Shining, things like that. And that's a really cool book. And that's where I think the strength of real books will lie.
Yeah.
More in as you said, more in the autobiographical material and behind the scenes kind of stuff, the making of and whatnot. And they might tie that in. A print book might have a link that you can type in that goes to a multimedia site, and it maybe extends the experience as well. So there's many avenues that they can take there. But one of the hard things, and Hans came up with this great question, and we got some great responses. So Hans, why don't you tell everybody what your question was and some of the responses that we got to it?
Yeah, the question was, now that Christmas is almost here and you might want to give someone a book, and if you then go buy this new version and give them an ebook, how on earth are you going to wrap an ebook? It's not a physical thing. But we got some really great answers here. Someone said, Johnny Nys said, you stick it inside an e-card. That's a good one.
Yeah.
And we have Tyson Blue said, you wrap it in the wallpaper you just downloaded. So might be a bit hard, but you never know.
I gotta give him kudos for the originality. That was a good answer.
Yeah. And Janet Wilson, gift card, that works.
Mm-hmm.
And wrap an ebook, simply zip or RAR it with a password to unzip it. Email the recipient to arrive on Christmas Day. Write the password in a card, put the card in a box, and wrap it. Yeah.
Very clever.
That's great. And you can send the file over, and they can be like getting all their
and here's the password to
up,
exit.
and then you send the
password.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
On the Christmas Day, and then they can't peek ahead. So that's a good one.
Yeah, I like that one quite a bit. So some great answers there, and just one more on the plus side, which I've also made use of, and this is from Laura Hafen. She says she loves her ebook reader because it allows her to access all the free books that are available on Project Gutenberg and Google Books, etc. And this is really good because you can get like a lot of reference material type of information there. Plus, like a lot of the classics where the rights of the authors have expired because of so much time has passed. So you get stuff like the Dickens and the Jane Austens, things like that off of there as well.
And you can search an ebook. That can be really valuable if you're using it as a reference book. If you want to find something in it, you can just search for it instead of flipping through the entire book.
Yep.
So that's and you can, since I was traveling recently, you can bring a lot of stuff with you if you have it on ebook. You can have many books. You can read like newspapers and stuff. What you have to think about though is having the battery fully charged, because if the battery dies, you can't do much with it.
Yeah.
And I don't know about the US, but here in Sweden at least, the price of an ebook is still fairly high.
Mm-hmm.
And without having any inside knowledge to how an ebook is produced, I think that if you compare a hardback and a ebook, the base have to be the same because you have to bring out the text and everything. But then I imagine that it's much easier to just copy the ebook than printing another hardback.
Mm-hmm.
So the price should be able to be quite a bit lower than if you buy a hardback. So I think the publisher have something to work on there to get the price down.
Yeah, well, that's part of the transition from one means of distribution to another. I agree with you. But the pricing, it's not consistent in North America. Some ebooks are quite cheap compared to the hardcovers, but others are almost as expensive, and in some cases more expensive than the physical copy, which makes no sense at all. So yeah, there's some weird stuff going on there. I'm sure that will get sorted out as time goes by, but in general, if you're really interested in a particular ebook, my advice is to put out like price watches through Amazon or whatever, because invariably at some point they go on sale, and then you can get a really nice book for a couple of bucks, which seems like a fair price for an ebook.
Yeah, that's like as we talked about earlier. If I like sitting here in Sweden and want a book, I can do a price check practically around the world. Yep. And if I find it on the other side of the earth, I can easily buy it without having an extra cost in shipping. So
yeah, it's a great global solution for distribution of books for sure. And you know, the main thing, of course, is as long as the writer is getting his fair share of whatever the price is being charged, that's the main thing. And I think in most cases they are. I know, because distribution is probably the most expensive part of a book's cost. So
yeah, so even if the price goes down on ebooks, they should probably be able to sell more of them to compensate.
Yeah. And generally they make more profit off ebooks than they do on physical copies anyhow. So
yeah.
Alrighty, so that's everything I had about ebooks. How about you?
Yeah, it's everything I had as well. And if anyone have any comments on what we have said, or think that we are totally wrong or totally right, we would definitely like to hear it.
Or somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, somewhere in the middle. And if anyone gives out a ebook as a Christmas gift this year, please tell us how you gave it away.
Yeah, and how it was received. So that would be interesting too. So
that's a plus. If you give someone a book and the person who gets it doesn't like it, it doesn't hurt so much if they throw it back at you.
And on that note, we'll see. This is the end of this discussion.
Yep. And now we are going to take a look at a new Stephen King story that actually isn't out in print yet, but it was read by Stephen at a visit he did to the University of Lowell in Massachusetts. And it's called Afterlife. And from the beginning, we heard that this one was supposed to be a comic. But I don't know if this is the same or if it's just something else. But the titles are the same. But this one is about a fellow who dies. And when he does, he arrives at this strange place. And he meets a man there who gives him a choice. That he can either live his life all over again, exactly the same way that he has lived it, with no memory of the fact that he's living it for another time. And this is, I don't remember how many times he's done it, but it's several times.
Yeah, around 15.
Yeah, or he can choose another door and it will all end for him. And this is a short story. I think Stephen read it in about 30 minutes. And it asks a very interesting question: if you would live your life all over again. And I think that the human mind always thinks that it can do something better and the second time than the first time. And I think I would have a hard time believing that I wouldn't remember that I'm actually doing this for a second time. So I don't know. I think I would have chosen the door where I lived my life all over again. How about you?
Yeah, I think King is writing a story about, it's another story about hope and the human belief that we can always, if given another chance, do better the next time around. So this is very much a story in that vein, and this protagonist in this story, William Andrews, he's not really a bad guy. Like, his sins are not nearly as bad as in his other recent stories, like the one with the baseball one, but in this story, he's done a couple of bad things, but especially one that he really regrets, which turned into a date rape, basically. But it's not like his host, Isaac Harris, who, along with his business partner, locked about 146 women in a sweatshop of some type, and a fire started, and basically all those women were burned and killed. So this is a more relatable character, I think, than in his more recent stories. So you can understand why.
Yeah.
You can understand why he wants to go back and change it,
Yeah.
but it's a human stubbornness or belief that we can do things better the second time. And I think most of us, like you said, Hans, would take the left door. But
Yeah.
this Isaac person is saying this is like about the 15th time you've done this, so, and nothing's ever changed. It's kind of like his Dark Tower story in a way too, right? With Roland keeps going through the whole cycle, trying to do it better, and at the end of this cycle, he remembers the horn.
Yeah.
Which does change things. So it's one of those. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and it gives him a little hope there that he can have remember places and people and like deja vus and stuff. So he gives him a little bit of hope that he might remember anything, even though he says he can't. It will be the same.
Yeah, William Andrews says at the end of the story, before he takes the left door, he says, even if I just remember one thing, even if it's just one thing, that might change everything. So, yeah, it's a story about hope, and it's a story that, like Stephen King's other short stories we just talked about recently, like the Batman and Robin have an incident, he's able to create fully realized characters in a very short time period. So, it's William Andrews person and Isaac Harris. They both feel like real people by the time you get to the end of the story, which is cool. And it showcases King's ability to create characters again. Yeah.
And I think this one was extra good since it was actually read by Stephen himself. And he has an ability to draw you into the story. And it was fun to see the video of it because he really acted out the stories almost.
Yeah. And it's got that trademark King humor, too.
Yeah.
A little bit of potty humor, perhaps, but I found it pretty funny. And he also did a reference. I don't know if you caught it, Hans, but this William Andrews, he was born in the Hemingford home in Nebraska, which, of course, is a tie-in to The Stand with Mother Abigail.
Those small tie-ins, they are almost always there.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the story quite a bit. And like you said, it was originally for a comic. I have to think that based on this reading, he fleshed out the story quite a bit more.
Yeah. And I must say, I'm happy that it wasn't a comic. I like it. I think I like it more as a story.
Sorry, we're laughing about something else that we're struggling with right now. So.
Yeah. Do you want to tell them?
No, we'll just leave them guessing.
Yeah.
We're not going to give away all our secrets. I think they'll be able to figure that one out at some point in a podcast or two. We'll see.
Yeah.
So overall, again, another great Stephen King story that I would really like to be able to read.
Yeah.
Even though I enjoy listening to him narrate his tales, I still don't really feel like I've gotten the full impact of the story until I've read it.
Yeah.
Regardless if it's ebook or paperback.
Yeah. No mention of if it will be released yet or in what kind of form. So this is what we have so far.
Yeah, I hope that in some short story collection that's coming down the pipe that Stephen King will release the print version of this story.
Yeah. There are a few short stories out, so soon maybe he'll have for another short story.
Yep. Okay. And that's everything I had for that story. We both enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah, and you should all check it out. It's online, so check out that reading.
Yep, check it out at Hans' site, and he's also got video clips from his visit and the conversation that he did with the students. One's in the classroom, and then there's another 2 video clips that are from the whole more formal auditorium speech that he did, and it's definitely well worth listening to. And there's a great story in it about him and Bruce Springsteen that you should listen to. I can't wait to show it to my brother because he's a big Springsteen fan. I'm sure he's going to get a kick out of it.
Yeah, I'm sure he will.
Yeah.
Yep.
Alrighty. Good stuff.
Okay. Yep.
So there you go, folks. That's another Lilja and Lou podcast, and we hope you enjoyed that. This is our last podcast for 2012, as I will be off on vacation for a couple of weeks over the Christmas holidays. And so I want to say to you and to your family, happy holidays and a happy New Year. And of course, that goes to you as well, Hans. Have a great holidays.
Thank you. Same to you.
And we will pick it up about slightly past the midpoint of January next year. So we'll look forward to the podcast. We're going to be bringing bigger and better things, we hope. And again, we hope we've enjoyed the podcast that we've done this year. We're looking forward to doing more. And until then, Hans,
stay safe, but stay scared.